So as we sit here on a huge cruise ship,
This
not a
lovely
bad.
Seaborn Legend.
How is life right now?
Life right now is really good. How can it be bad? As strenuous as the days were and as scary and as dangerous, we would go home at the end of the day, and this is where my room was, right there.
Right behind us?
I think it's like the Queen Maud room right there. That's where a lot of action did not take place. That was Jason's room over there. Jan's room was right there, which he was never in. He had a little villa over.
I heard you had keys to everybody's room.
Of course I did. I had to make the rounds.
You're the little snooper.
Oh, I'm so bad at that. I give people absolutely no respect. But then when they're on a cruise ship, they should open their doors. It should be something. So yeah, Jason a lot of times would, be like napping or having conversations, and I would just like walk in. No, I'm kidding. What are you doing? Oh, you're naked. That's interesting. So no, I would go into people's rooms. I have no problem with that.
It wasn't very long ago, really, when you think about it. 8 years when you were doing your first film, Who Shot
Pat? It was in New York while I was still in school. Yeah, studying. Yeah, that was Who Shot Pat, which was like a great small documentary, sort of docu-style story of the director's life. I did a lot of NYU films, student films, low-budget films where you got paid $25 a day and you learned how to hit your mark. I mean, unfortunately, those things are still around. We're like, this is her first film where she missed her mark, and she's looking for it.
Actually, have you looked at that film lately?
Which one?
Who Shot Pat? It's pretty good.
It's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful, small story. That's one of my favorites. I mean, the great thing is that you never know. I mean, you find somebody who's passionate about a story, and you're sucked into that, and you hope that it turns out well. Most of the time it does not. Every once in a while something becomes a gem. And Who Shot Pat Akenga was wonderful. I mean, we had our $50 a day. We would cart ourselves, and you'd bring your own little sweater, and you'd make a film about this time in this director's life, and it was so sweet and great. I mean, that's what's so nice about. That's why every time I do a film, you do something of this magnitude, you feel compelled to go do something small. Do a short film with your friends. Do a theater project. Do something where everyone has to do at least two to three things where you're part of its growth, rather than you waiting in your trailer, with your cookies and wait for somebody to say that they're ready, which takes away. I mean, you get lazy. It's not beneficial. What does it add? Nothing. You try to pick new hobbies and knitting. See, everyone gets sweaters for Christmas. So,
which you just did, making your own film.
I make sweaters too, by the way.
Oh, you do?
Yes, I knit.
I'll give you my address.
Okay. Yeah, I made a short. This time, I had produced one before that someone else directed and wrote, and that was lucky enough to get to Sundance. And then I did this one, and then we don't know. I think another girlfriend of mine is going to do the next one, and so we'll all support her. We'll all do either craft service or wardrobe. I'm good in those areas with food and clothes. Yeah.
So you would show up and do craft service.
Oh, everybody does it for each other. It's on the short film that I did. Pam, my makeup artist, decided she wanted to be a first AD, and I said, well, if you're going to be the first AD, you have to be the line producer. And there she was in the middle of the night for 3 months pre-production going, I hate you so much. But she was amazing. So anybody who wants to do something new can, as long as they do the job right.
When I was looking through some of your old, I looked through everything I could get my hands on.
Oh, bless your heart.
Yeah. And you've been pretty good for quite a while, actually, is what I discovered. But, I mean, like...
Pretty good in what? That I didn't get naked, or what?
No, I mean, like, Who Shot Pat?
I did twice.
From a long time ago. You just see the same sort of honesty.
Well, it's like the thing that I studied. I studied something called the Meisner technique, which is being truthful in imaginary circumstances. And nothing else made sense to me. This sort of interpreting the scene. First, you have to feel like you're bacon frying in a pan. So I'm like, I'll never be bacon. And, not like I'm going to lay myself in a frying pan to experience it. The only thing I can draw on is what I know. And that's the thing that I've learned. And that's why my progression in my work grows in smaller increments, because I can't do anything else but what I've learned or have some sort of sense that I can draw on, or I'll be faking it. And I don't want to do that. And I think by the time I'm 60, will I've evolved as much as I would like to. There are people who are better character actors than I am. I love doing character work, but it's in smaller increments. So I know what my limitations are, and I know what my abilities are, but they're a ways away. So so I could, be truthful, and you've got half the game mastered there. But there's a lot to learn. But yeah, that's the technique of that time, was just be truthful in that circumstance. And
tell me about the truthfulness of Bionic Showdown.
Oh my God! Well, the truthfulness of that is that the first day I showed up, really good. They showed up with my wardrobe, and it was about this big.
Skimpiest.
The little running thing. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And what was funny about that is when I was in New York studying, and you do your amount of theater, and whatever job you get, you're lucky. And I was lucky to get that job. It was one of those things where I auditioned, and the guy said, you know what, I like her, and I couldn't figure out why, but it was even in the scene where I was in the wheelchair and I had to decide, when Lee Majors and Lindsay Wagner came in, does she have this operation? It might work, it might not, It was supposed, and where I'd come from was I have to roll off and do my emotional prep to come back in and feel that, and it wasn't great filmmaking, I know that, but it was, once again, I got to learn. People paid me money to learn, to do what I do, because you can't learn that in school. You can't learn the difference between theater acting and film acting because the differences are so great. So I got on-the-job training. The only thing is if you look back and if you regret anything you've done, it's on celluloid for the rest of your life. Okay, Jason did that. I know he did.
Uh-oh,
Jason! Treat me with respect!
You know what else he said? Speaking of which,
See, he throws me money.
I said something to him about that I thought you brought something out of him.
Yeah.
And he said, I just throw her a bone once in a while.
Jason, I brought something out of you.
I told her you said you just threw her a bone once in a while, that she didn't bring anything out.
Why do you talk like that? You know how I feel about your potty mouth. What? Oh, you're funny. You're funny.
Just popped up.
Say nice things.
Go away. He's giving us the go away.
You look really handsome today, by the way.
See, look how nice you are.
But look how
initiated
handsome.
it.
Look how handsome. See, it's like kill him with kindness. As mean as he gets with me, I send back the love. He's a loving person. He's just afraid of how much he has inside, because he has a lot of love. And his shirt matches his eyes. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah, we all noticed.
We all noticed.
Handsome
And like,
Jason
and
Patrick
like he
is.
didn't plan that
Yeah.
shirt to match his eyes. I'm so sure. I planned this dress to match my 3-tone hair color. You see the 4 colors that are going on here? The kind of same colors that are going on in my hair.
Your hair is looking good.
Well, it's migrating towards the next film I'm doing, because
Oh,
Jenna
really?
Rollins plays my mother, and my daughter's also very light, and I sort of have to find that middle balance. So it's in the middle.
There's a treat to work with Jenna Rollins.
You have no idea. And this is a project that I've been working on for a year and a half, and where I get to actually stand by and produce it. And it's something that a friend of mine wrote, and it's one of those small labors of love that everyone else says, why is this so important to you? And it says, because it's my entire life in 120 pages in a way. And
Is this Hope Floats?
Mm-hmm, yeah. And when we were talking about mothers, I said, well, there's 2 women that I adore who are Jenna Rollins and Joan Woodward. And I said, if any one of them, and then we said, well, let's try Jenna, because she has more of the essence of the woman that we're talking about. And when she said yes, and when you're a part of something like that, you never assume that anyone else is going to be as crazy about it as you are. And so on that note, we just said, well, if this is how it's working, let's just send it out, and whoever comes to us, that's who we'd like to work with, rather than desperately scrounging after people whose hearts are halfway into it. So we got very lucky, incredibly lucky.
When you look back on something like Working Girl,
Mm-hmm.
at that time, did you feel like, you talk about with the passion you have,
Yeah.
but at that time, does that feel like, boy, this is it, I got a TV series?
At the beginning, yes. I mean, when I auditioned for that, what was so great about that was having seen the movie and having read the pilot that they were doing, they allowed her to be so from where she was. She was imperfect. She had that tone in her voice that a lot of people from Long Island do, which is not the most pleasant to listen to, but altogether it worked.
Even the seagulls,
Thank you
react.
very much, thank you. My biggest fans. The thing about that was, once we started filming, I think so many irons being in the fire, and it having been television, nobody wanted to hear someone talking like this. And they wanted to sort of glaze over it and make it generic, which was so disheartening to me. And here I was, having gotten involved in something that I was so excited about, and which was such a great stepping stone for me, where all of a sudden, every line that I got, I was the straight man, I was not allowed to do the accent, they toned everything down, and it was so hard for me. Every week going to work was one of the most difficult experiences I'd ever had. And once again, though, I'm so glad it happened, because it reminds you, when you go into the next thing, if there's certain things that are a strong part of the script, make sure that they're going to stay that way. You just learn to ask different questions. Yeah, I didn't know to ask. I didn't know that I could fight for things. I didn't know how to fight for things, and it was really hard. It was really hard because I felt I could do so much better and wasn't allowed. And when people are operating on fear, where the network wants it to do well, and everyone wants a certain thing from it, you forget that the thing that made the movie work was exactly what they'd taken away. So that was really hard. But like anything, that led to the next thing. That led to this little film that I did called Love Potion Number 9, where the first half of that film is one of my favorite films. It's one of the favorite things I've ever done. I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
You are so cute with the glasses and the hair.
The hair over the lip and the monobrow and the buck teeth, yeah. But stuff like that I love to do. I love that stuff so much. But Working Girl, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have gotten that. And if I hadn't gotten that, I wouldn't have gotten the next thing. So, it's just, everything is like the domino effect. If it wasn't for, and as ridiculous as it sounds, Bionic Showdown, I wouldn't have gotten Working Girl. I wouldn't have gotten Love Potion Number 9. I wouldn't have gotten The Vanishing.
Were you able to see that at the time?
That one was leading to the next? Yeah, because you could hear people saying, well, we watched this of her and we saw that she could maybe do this based on what we saw. If they didn't have that piece of tape right there, they never would have seen it. So, and once again, it was even with Bionic Showdown, I said, who was Wonder Woman's sister?
Oh, you got me.
No, you know who Wonder Woman's sister was?
Trivia guys.
Oh, Shadowlands. Deborah Winger. Deborah Winger was Wonder Woman's. And I said, if Deborah Winger can be Wonder Woman's sister, I'll give you the Bionic Girl. But it's a start. It's an absolute start. That I was Taft-Hartley, which is where they make you SAG, and usually you can't become SAG unless something. But I was given so many shots, like Speed. Jan didn't have to cast me because the studio wanted somebody else, and he said no, and this was his first film. So I owe him so much, but I also owe those people along the line that everybody was supposed to cast somebody else, but they didn't.
But really, that reflects what you just said about Jan, is that he said he saw in you, I'm sure,
a bus driver. Literally, he did. He said he saw somebody who he could see handling a bus.
And that has to come from some of your prior work, looking at...
Yeah, absolutely. And also when I auditioned for it, if you're rolling around on the floor with Keanu Reeves playing bus driver, it's not too hard to audition. Like, oh, Keanu. And like when you're sitting in a chair and you have to mime driving a bus, see how well I did that?
That was good.
Because you don't drive like this, bus wheels are like that.
How many times were you asked during those interviews, could you really drive a bus now?
Yeah, I'm actually licensed. I passed my driver's test, and I have my union, and everyone knows this. I think I'm union number 200 in the bus drivers, Santa Monica Bus Drivers Union.
Speaking of Keanu, you've had some pretty amazing leading men.
You know what I've really lucked out, and you don't think about it while you're working because you see them as like normal people who are fellow actors, but when you go into malls and you realize who you're working with, they're like, oh my God, what was it like to kiss Keanu Reeves? Oh my God. And you're like, okay, hold on. I've been, not only I've had such a great, you look at Richard Harris, Robert Duvall, Keanu, Jason, Matthew,
Sylvester,
Sly, who was, by the way, one of my favorite people to work with in general, all across the board. And at the end of the film, he said, if you can work with me, you can do absolutely anything. Because he'd put me through the ringer. I was like he was like my satanic older brother. He was just, but he was so incredibly good to me and nice, and I was so scared because I just come off of Wrestling Ernest Hemingway, which was a small film, this gorgeous film that I did, and I was in the midst of a $70 million huge action was a futuristic film, Joel Silver production, which, it was something I totally didn't understand, and he knew I was scared, and here I am, method actor, going, well, she wouldn't really say this, and I'm like, it's the future, shut up, say it, and I'm like, okay. So you learn how to, I'm trying to sneak in the Meisner method, and they just want the explosion to go off. I'd never had to wait for a camera to come up and the explosion to go off and then say your line. Everything was always character motivated, and this was, other things motivated, and he was very, very, very kind to me, and just funny. Just a good man.
How important is work to you? How much a part of your life?
It's a little too important, I think, at this. I mean, it is everything right now. I mean, I've always said, when my priorities change, when I have a family, when I become married and have children, my priorities will shift drastically. But I can have a child on one hip and, messing in a film with the other. It just won't be as great. That's why when I set up the production company, I'm setting up stories that I love and I'm passionate about that have nothing to do with me. That are stories that I've always wanted to see and tell, but where I'm not in them. And I can still be a part of the creative process, but not be responsible for telling the story. Yeah.
Is it hard to find balance? Do you struggle with that?
Right now, the balance is perfect for me right now. But I feel pretty harmonious. I feel like sometimes I'm way too at home at work, because if I'm sitting by myself for a week, I go nuts and I have to be productive. That's why I, rip down another wall in the house or find another fixture that belongs in. I feel like I need to be doing something productive. But just work ethic to me in general is very important. I feel very driven by that, but not to always work, but just to be productive, I think.
When you look at the Sandra Bullock career, no matter how far it goes, one timeline will be speed. How much has your life changed? It changed dramatically.
Before, it was a slow progression where everything, you saw what you worked for. You audition, usually it's 3, you screen test, you didn't get it, you got it. Audition, screen test. One speed happened, all of a sudden this luxury happened, which to me is still uncomfortable and fearful, because people say, here, do this script, and I can look at these scripts and you say, how do you think I can do that? Because I can't do this right now. I might be able to do this in a year, but there's no way. And I don't want it to become sort of an ego thing where like, oh, of course I can do it. I have to keep check of myself, because like I said, my steps are smaller than most, and it's an uncomfortable thing. It's an honor to not have to audition, believe me. I mean, it's a part of that process that's incredibly grueling, but there's also a sense of accomplishment because you earned it. A lot of times I don't feel like I've earned, and I need to feel like I've earned it, and I think that's why I've gotten into the production end of things, because I was responsible for putting it, getting it started, going through the mess, because that's where the mess is in pre-production. It's not once you start shooting. That's damage control. That's the mess, and I want to be part of that. So I think it's a sense of feeling like you deserve what you get rather than having something handed, and then everyone else does all the work, and then it becomes successful, and you're like, I had nothing to do with this. I wore the wardrobe, and that was it.